It is official. The Detroit Tigers have traded Tarik Skubal.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Sunday, August 2nd, 2026. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who will be hitting a home run this MLB season. You get 6 episodes this week because, well, Tarik Skubal got traded over the weekend. So going to release this one Sunday evening-ish, maybe right after the Tiger game, somewhere around there. And then we'll get an episode tomorrow, kind of highlighting what we expect on deadline day, recapping the weekend, etc. But there was no way I was going to fit all of my thoughts on Skubal and the weekend as a whole, Clark debut, etc., all into just 30 minutes. So we're going to break it up into 2. The Detroit Tigers have traded Tarik Skubal to the Los Angeles Dodgers. In return, the Tigers get Zaire Hope, River Ryan, and Brady Smith. Hope will report to AA Erie. River will start on the AAA injured list with a hamstring injury, but is almost assuredly going to be in the Tigers rotation when he is healthy from there and not like he's only in AAA because at the beginning of the year he's coming off of Tommy John and now he has the hamstring injury. So he will be in the majors by the end of the year, health permitting. And then Brady Smith will report to West Michigan High Single A. So your return, if you're a big prospects ranking type of fan, the Tigers traded Tarik Skubal. They received the new number 1 prospect in their entire organization. Right now, it's still technically Max Clark, but Clark is not going to get like demoted and removed from the 40-man and like lose his prospect or he's not going to regain his prospect status rather. So in terms of players that are in the minor leagues, Hope is your new number 1 prospect in the entire organization. River will be your number 5, and Smith comes in ranked at 14 in the Tigers organization, according to all of that MLB pipeline. I have a lot of thoughts here. That's why we are recording 2 shows on a Sunday. I want to start off by saying I don't think that this is a bad return at all. It's not the greatest fleece in MLB history. The Detroit Tigers did not make out like, gangbusters, but I think they got appropriate value, which isn't like exciting to say, but I think that is where I kind of lie here. This is what trading Tarik Skubal was always going to look somewhat like. No one out there was going to give you significantly more than what the Tigers got in terms of caliber of return or value. Whether you want to hear that or not, I apologize. I hate saying things that maybe upset people. Not my goal here. But in my eyes, that's reality. Scott Harris did not just take a light return for fun. There were a lot of offers on the table, some of which have already come to light. The Dodgers offer was way better than what the Phillies threw out there, etc. This was the best offer on the table. Why was this the best offer on the table? If you're one of those people that's like, well, Tarik Skubal is Tarik Skubal. Why did we not get, 8 of the best prospects in all of baseball for him? He will not even throw 100 innings for the Dodgers this year. He also will test free agency. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to go back to the Dodgers, but he is going to test free agency. He is a rental. Whether he re-signs with the Dodgers in the winter or not, he is a rental. I think that's a very common misconception. It's like, oh, well, he's just going to re-sign with the Dodgers. That doesn't matter in terms of trade negotiation. He is a rental. Every other team is bidding as if he is a rental. So the Dodgers know what price they have to pay to acquire him, even if they are going to re-sign him. He also had surgery in his throwing elbow 2 months ago. It's his lowest average fastball velocity he's had since 2023 this season, which he also had surgery in 2023. Look, he's been great. I'm not trying to sell you this pipe dream or this fantasy that Tarik Skubal is like not good. He's one of the best pitchers alive, obviously. I think there is a disconnect between what people expected in return versus this return is garbage. There is no correlation in reality between those two statements. He is not the best he's ever been. He is not under team control for multiple seasons. He's going to make 8 or 9 starts for the Dodgers this season. Obviously, they could just re-sign him. You can't have it both ways, I guess is my point, right? Like I read my own comment section. I'm constantly gauging the fan base's opinions and kind of the voice that is permeating throughout the fan base and constantly trying to figure out what that is and what the stance of most fans are. You can't say, oh, he's not worth the big contract. He never pitches past the 7th inning. He's been injured a lot in his career. He's got, he's not as good this year as he has been the last 2 years, even if he's still great, obviously. There's concerns about him being healthy long-term. He's not going to re-sign here, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you get this return, which, by the way, if we look historically, is quite frankly one of the bigger prospect hauls for a rental that we have seen in recent baseball history, is too light, right? You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth in that regard. You look at the last 10 years of players who were rentals. Juan Soto was not a rental. The last 10 years of rentals, especially rental pitchers, and you add everything that I just mentioned earlier with the surgery and the injury and what he's been doing this year, et cetera, this is about as good as it was going to get, which I have said on this show for a while. For the last month plus, I've been on here saying, if you're expecting a monster haul, you're going to be disappointed. He's not going to make some historic Juan Soto caliber, return. You have to limit your expectations if you really want to trade him. The issue here in my eyes is that there was a maybe misinformed assumption that he would get some historic, insane haul, which was just never reality. That was never going to happen. Again, we talked about that on this show a lot. I wanted to trade him, and after seeing this return, my stance did not change. I believe that this was the right thing to do, given all of the current factors that are, the current situation and all of the things that are factoring into the Tigers' current situation. I do not think they fleeced LA. That's also not what I'm saying. I'm not selling you that this is the best value ever and that we should all be clicking our heels in the streets. But I think it's about right. And that's not fun for radio. That's not like some awesome clickbait title that I'm sure a lot of other media members are going to take and run with throughout this week and when, talking about the return for Tarik Skubal. But in my eyes, it's the truth. This is about the value I expected for him. You also have to look at the alternative. You hold on to him for 8 to 10 more starts. You lose him in free agency. You potentially miss the playoffs. You potentially make them too, to be fair. But you potentially miss the postseason. You don't get what hopes to be your future starting corner outfielder. A guy who has a pretty high ceiling in a rotation with 5 years of control left. And another guy who I'm pretty high on in Brady Smith. Look, you don't have to be happy with the fact that they traded him. Quite the opposite. I am, at all. I am not thrilled that they are in a position where this was the choice that had to be made. It sucks to trade away your best players. Always. I am sad and upset at the fact that they traded Tarik Skubal away. I would prefer we just have an organization where we can keep our best players. I have maintained that the last 2 calendar years on this show almost every day. I think the situation presently, the situation that presented itself this year, forced their hand into trading him. My number one choice for the last 20 plus months has always been to just pay him and retain your best players. But the return is not the issue here. The only reason people are mad at the return, and the only people that are mad at the return, and I'm not trying to like generalize or group people together, but the reason people are upset is because they were under the belief that more was possible. It was not. I'm telling you that. I guess it's not factually for me to say that because I was not in those rooms, right? I guess I don't know for certain. But you were never going to get much more value than this. So the disappointment comes from failed expectations being too high, not because this return is awful. The fact that they had one of the best players in baseball and keeping him long-term was never even spoken about is disgusting to me and is heartbreaking for this organization. I think it's a massive failure. It felt like it was never even a choice. It was never even on the table for the Tigers to hold on to their best player over the last 3 years. Trading him before this season also probably wasn't a choice. I tweeted something out where I was like, yeah, if being 3-ish games out of the race, out of the playoff mix was enough to sell him, then it probably made more sense to do it in the offseason. That's hindsight. That's me trying to sound smart when I'm not, right? That is complete hindsight and using that to your advantage. In the moment, you're trying to win. And most people, especially in this front office, believe that they had a chance to do that this year. And honestly, outside of May, they have done that. But they had a May from heck, and here we are. There's a lot of baggage with this entire situation. And I do think the front office handled it poorly over the last 1.5 to 2 years. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to talk about the players we did actually get. Spent the whole first segment here talking about the response to the trade and what the value of it and could they have gotten more, whatever. Let's talk about what they actually did get. And then I have plenty of other thoughts as well that I'll bore you with. Okay, we'll do that right after this. First, though, I'm going to talk to you about our friends over at Amazon. Back to school season is here. Spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy back to school shopping experiences can be, right? Starts with a few items on a list, and suddenly you're shopping for supplies, clothes, lunch gear, and about 10 other things you didn't see coming. It adds up really, really quickly. When you look at the school supply list and wonder if you're shopping for one child or opening a small office supply store, well, things can get really overwhelming really quickly, right? I mean, I have, friends who have kids that are starting like elementary school now and whatnot. And they're like, holy cow, how did our parents, when prices were lower, even afford all this? Nonetheless, now shopping can get out of control when you're not careful. So remember, with Amazon's low back to school prices, just spend less on your kids because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, making us to our first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back, well, depending on when you're listening, just in a few hours. We'll have a midnight release for a Monday show as well that will recap kind of the weekend outside of the Skubal situation, but it was just a very busy weekend. So here we are with 2 shows. I want to talk about the players we did get. This is obviously the highlight of this episode, right? We talk about the exciting players they did get for Tarik Skubal. I'm really excited about these additions, to be frank with you. And I think all 3 can be MLB contributors for the Tigers. And 2 of them, I think it's fair to say still have pretty high-end ceilings. And you can really kind of squint and make an argument for all three. So let's start with Zaire Hope. Obviously, the headliner of this deal, 5'10", 193-pound, 21-year-old corner outfielder. He is around a top 20 to 25-ish, give or take a few spots, prospect in all of baseball, depending on which publication you look at. And again, that's one of three guys they got for 8 weeks of Tarik Skubal. I'm going to keep reiterating that point. He is going to be the Tigers. He already is the Tigers' top prospect in the organization among players that haven't debuted yet, right? Like technically Clark still has prospect status, even though we obviously know that he's going to be in center field pretty much every day the rest of the season. Zaire Hope in Double-A this year is batting .293 with a .369 OBP, a .530 slug. That's an .899 OPS. He has 23 home runs, 18 stolen bases, and 87 RBI in 94 games played. That is a really, really exciting profile. He's not a platoon guy, hits righties and lefties both really well. In the month of July, his OPS in Double-A is over 1,100. So I think that's also a guy that you look at and you go, he could be in Toledo in 2 or 3 weeks, right? He could be a mud hen by the end of this MLB season, or this baseball season, I should say. Peripheral wise, it's really exciting in terms of tools, right? I just listed off the numbers and what he's producing, but the projectability is certainly there as well. He's really fast. He is built. I mean, if you look at him, he's only 5'9" or 5'10", but he is, most people compare him to being built like an NFL running back. Like he is very much built. And that build allows him to get off a really high bat speed, which certainly we've seen is going to lend itself to some swing and miss. There's some really high-end players with elite bat speed that, you know, strike out and swing and miss a decent amount. Judge, Ohtani, et cetera. And I'm obviously not comparing. He's not going to be Judge or Ohtani. Hate to break it to you. But that is when we're talking about elite bat speed, that's exciting because it lends itself, you know, fairly obviously to power. And he has had a lot of power over the last calendar year at the minor league level. Also has a really good arm in the outfield, which is not nothing to me. It's not why you like make the trade or anything, but we have an outfield full of noodle arms and have for like the last 5+ years. Clark has a really good arm in center, and now we have Hope, who's going to have a really good arm in a corner outfield position. He's gotten a ton of praise. This is not going to surprise anyone for his swing decisions. He does have some swing and miss concerns, which I bring up in part with the bat speed. And to me, it's been blown a little bit out of proportion. I think everything involving this has been blown way out of proportion. Yes, he does have swing and miss stuff, but his whiff rate and K rate is about league average at the Double-A level. So like, it's not like he's some astronomically, you know, outlier in terms of that. Like it's almost exactly league average, in fact, for Double-A bats. Then yeah, he on top of that, he's been crushing the baseball, has a ton of pop, has been hitting for average and power while also drawing a fair amount of walks as well. Super young, et cetera, great athlete, all those things you love to hear. All of this is to say, I think there's a potential like all-star caliber player here. Do I think that's the most likely outcome? Probably not. I think if the Tigers can get around an 800 OPS, you know, plus defender in the corner outfield that can steal bases and hit homers, that's a massive win, right? And again, obviously assuming they can get something out of the other two players involved in this as well. I think he can be a really darn good player and has the ceiling of, you know, if everything clicks, being, you know, a high-end corner outfielder. You're talking legitimate 20-20 potential, if not 30-30 potential, with a plus arm, plus defense, plus swing decisions. His career on-base percentage in the minor leagues, every single stint of minor league baseball he has played since being drafted, is .384. That's with power, mind you, at the minor league level. So it's a really exciting profile. As I mentioned, the biggest concerns are how the whiffs translate, especially the baseball prospectus and MLB pipeline kind of talked about high velo up in the zone being a weakness of him. We've seen that with other players in the organization, Kerry Carpenter, Riley Greene, et cetera. But again, it hasn't been awful to the point where it's hindering his production. Certainly not over the last 5 weeks as well. And he could be a 21-year-old hitting well in AAA by the end of this season. That's pretty darn nice. And again, borderline top 20 prospect in the entire sport. A lot of tools. Let's talk about the pitchers that the Tigers got for Tarik Skubal, obviously a pitcher. We'll do that right after this. First, I'm going to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a home run today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. You just make a free pick on who you think will hit a home run in their game. And if you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following favorite teams or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get a chance to make your prediction before first pitch. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a home run. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you for tuning in. As always, this is probably going to be a little bit of a longer show. Just a lot to break down here with this Skubal drama. So if we go past 30, don't be too mean. So let's talk about the pitchers the Tigers got. I think this is where most of the controversy stems from, and I to be quite frank, I think it's somewhat over a technicality. We'll start with Ryan River, which is the player in which I think is the most controversial addition to this. And I think to be fair, I think the reason it's the most controversial is because he's probably the one where the most is riding on in terms of is this appropriate value for Skubal, right? If we look back at this in 2 or 3 years and Ryan is a complete bust that can't stay healthy, then I think it's probably fair to draw criticism. And if he ends up being a solid, middle of the rotation or top end of the rotation starter, then obviously you're going to look at that and go, wow, we maybe even got 2+ good players out of this. But the reason I've actually gotten a kick out of seeing all the jokes about River Ryan's age and all the things online. There's somebody that says he witnessed like the Great Depression and that he's eligible for AARP and like all this stuff, which I do, giggle at a little bit. But he is immediately the Tigers' 5th ranked prospect and still a top 70 prospect in baseball, despite the fact that he turns 28 years old in a couple of weeks. I am of the opinion that the concern over the age is extremely misguided, or I guess is the word I will use. He debuted 2 calendar years ago, 3 seasons ago. He debuted in 2024 and in 4 starts had a 1.33 ERA for the Dodgers. He then needed Tommy John, didn't pitch the rest of that year, and didn't pitch at all in 2025. And now is pitching again this year in AAA for the first time since. Then had the hamstring injury, obviously, and got shelved again for a little bit. He was drafted in the later rounds as a college senior. So, he made his pro debut at 23 years old. He missed almost 2 years with Tommy John, which literally every high-velocity pitcher in baseball has at some point nowadays. All of them. There is pretty much no outliers left. To me, if he pitched a full season in 2024 for the Dodgers and then everything else happened the same way, no one would be complaining about this. Honestly, I am of the opinion, and this maybe is me going too far reactionary the other direction, that I truly think if he wasn't listed as a prospect, that people would be happier about this deal than the fact that he is. It's like the biggest talking point in the world to be like, oh, he's 28 years old and still a prospect. That's so stupid. How could you even call him a prospect, whatever? Well, because his development has actually been exactly a normal amount for a guy that made his professional debut at about 23 years old. I get it. He's old. He's 28 and is still on prospect rankings. I get how that's weird. But he throws a 97 and 98 mile an hour fastball, has a 90 plus mile an hour slider, a mid 80s curveball, a 95 mile an hour sinker, and a 90, 91 mile an hour changeup. As a starter, his ERA is over 4 in AAA this season. That's in 8 starts coming off of Tommy John. And quite frankly, this will get an eye roll from a lot of people, or maybe the anti-analytics crowd. His expected stats are significantly better than his actual stats. Why is that? I'm not just going to spew it and just move on. The reason why his expected stats are better, he doesn't give up hard contact at all. His average exit velocity and hard hit rate in the minor leagues is incredible. He strikes people out, and he doesn't walk anyone. Those 3 things are the 3 things used to determine the expected stats. And it's a small sample size, his actual stats. He has that caliber of stuff with one of the lowest walk rates in AAA this year, a strikeout rate just a hair under 30%, which is really solid, a fastball with an elite whiff rate down in the minor leagues, a cutter that's pretty new and been nice as well. There's a really solid pitching profile in this arm. The stuff is nasty, thus the ranking. I think there was a misconception that, like, oh, he's 28 and still on prospect rankings, that he spent like 10 years in the minor leagues and has been terrible down there and been like not good enough to be promoted. He debuted professionally in 2022. He missed all of 2025 with Tommy John. That's like 3 years of minor league development. That's pretty normal for a prospect, dude. Like, I think that's been blown way out of proportion. If anything, I understand concerns lie with the health, and I won't defend that. I am concerned about his health as well. But he's in the zone a ton. There's some questions about, I would say, his ability to get whiffs on non-fastball pitches at the major league level, right? The fastball is great. It's going to be really good. And that feels fair. The shape and velocity are fantastic, though. Just need to see more swing and miss on the breaking stuff. If you're upset because he has injury concerns, so be it. I will not argue with that. I will not get in the way with that. As I said, I have them too. My counter to that is just every good pitcher these days has injury concerns. B, if he hits, think about that. Think about if he's good and actually lives up to what these rankings provide. You are talking about having a guy under team control and having to pay next to no money for his age 28 through 34, 33-year-old season. That's pretty much his entire prime with the stuff that I just laid out. That's extremely ideal. And C, as I reiterate, if you've never seen him pitch, I don't know what to tell. Like, yes, he's old and still on a prospect list. I legitimately think that people are mad over a technicality of what a prospect is or isn't. I think if you just stripped him of the title of prospect status, people would actually be more excited about him. And you could say, oh, before the Tommy John, he was a top 50 prospect in baseball and now just came back this year. That's really exciting. He just never got an opportunity. People are way too hung up about what a third party, zero association to either team website is deeming a prospect and not deeming a prospect. I promise the Tigers don't care. Another fun thing with Ryan specifically is that he will be in the MLB rotation this year as soon as he's cleared from the hamstring injury. So we will get early returns on part of 1/3 of this Skubal return in 2026. And I think that's, the Dodgers obviously have an incredible rotation that's absolutely loaded, even more so now when it's fully healthy. So he's just going to get an opportunity to come over here and immediately be an MLB caliber starting pitcher. And he has really good stuff. It's not to say he's guaranteed to hit. I think he's probably a 2 in a rotation at best. But if he ends up being a middle rotation arm with good stuff, and Hope ends up being what you hope that he will be, it's not a bad return for 2 months of Skubal. Brady Smith, kind of the overlooked, not talked about player in this return. 21-year-old right-handed pitcher that will report to high single A West Michigan for the Detroit Tigers. He actually pitched most of this year in A-ball for the Dodgers and was really exciting. A 14.5 K per nine before his promotion. His K rate was like 37.5%, which for those who maybe don't look at those numbers often, that is astronomical. That is absurd. Okay, so a really good swing and miss strikeout guy, albeit at the single A level. His K rate in the minor leagues this year as a whole is over 35%. He also had Tommy John in 2024, is now back and fully healthy. His stats in high single A aren't good, and that was like everybody's favorite dunk online. They were like, look at he has like a 70 ERA. He's thrown 9 innings, dude. Let's just use an ounce of like critical thinking. That was blown way out of proportion as well. I think Davis is a really interesting player situationally, aside from just the talent that he clearly has on the mound. And the reason that's why he's a borderline top 10 prospect immediately, I should say top 15 prospect immediately in the organization. But he is Rule 5 eligible after 2027. So he has the rest of this year and the 2027 calendar year to basically the Tigers then have that time frame, the next year and a half in the calendar, to decide whether he is worthy of a 40-man roster spot going into the 2028 season or not. So he could be, my point is, a fast-ish riser. You don't have to super rush him. You had a year and a half, but I mean, if he starts off in Double-A next year and then ends in Triple-A next year, then the Tigers are going to slap him on the 40-man roster, and we could be talking about a guy who's around 25 years old getting a look at the MLB in 2028. It's a mid-90s fastball, gotten as hot as about 98 miles an hour at its peak, but he won't sit there. So that's fine, though. 95, 96 miles an hour is good. Best pitch is the changeup, which I find irony in. Trading, being a part of a Tarik Skubal trade. It's already a 60 grade currently, and it gets a ton of whiffs, so that's really exciting. High 80s slider, a slow curveball, new-ish cutter as well that's in the low 90s and has been good for him. Yeah, he has plus stuff and has gotten a ton of whiffs in the minor leagues. The question marks here are about harnessing the stuff more than I think anything else. He doesn't throw a ton, or as much as he should, I should say, in the zone. Despite not having a gross awful walk rate, it's still higher than you'd like compared to the league that he is in. So the stuff is good. It's just about being in the zone more, and that's going to be probably the biggest part of his development and will determine what kind of role he has going forward. But could be really fun and is very far from just like a throw-in. I want to make that very clear. Like, this is a solid prospect that's immediately in your top 15, and again, could be in Double-A by next year. Okay. Other thoughts. Return is not bad given circumstances. I kind of stressed that earlier. I think it's all public perception. And that, again, I don't want to make it, I'm not trying to go too far the other direction either. I truly, my thoughts on this deal are like very calm. Like it's like, this is a fine return for 2 months of a back-to-back Cy Young winner who's going to be a free agent and had elbow surgery 2 months ago. I was not expecting more than this, and I'm fine with the result. Fine. Not thrilled, throwing a party, not, oh my goodness, this front office is the worst thing ever. I think it's just accurate, which is probably the most boring thing you will hear today in terms of all the people that are going to be writing recaps or yapping on a microphone talking about it this week. But if anything, I'm honest with how I feel with you, and I will not waver from that. I think another thing that's important is looking outside of the Tigers organization. I think we got to a point where Skubal's name held more weight than his actual value. Given, again, I'm not going to repeat myself for like a fifth time, but all the situations I've laid out earlier. If you look outside of the Tigers organization at the perception of the return, it's like pretty much, not literally everyone, but you can't get everybody to agree on what color the sky is these days. So like I don't really care about having 100% positive reception, but it's been pretty positive. Like a lot of national media pundits are talking about how this is good value for the Tigers, or even, I mean, some people have like formulas and whatnot. I'd say that the Tigers got slightly more than even what Skubal is going to be worth to the Dodgers the rest of this year. And I think that that's important to do is to make sure you're looking, at the overall kind of reception here if you don't have opinions on the players individually. But now internally, the Tigers have Hope, Bryce Rayner, Briseño, River Ryan, I guess technically, but even if you ditch him, Chris Rodriguez, they're going to add Flukie into their prospect pool soon. Like that's a pretty decent pool there that, 2 of the 3 of those guys weren't here, a month ago. And a handful of them are knocking on the door of being major league players in the next year and a half. I also think that the Brewers and Rays should not be, what's the word I'm looking for? The Brewers and Rays should not be let off the hook here. The Dodgers did not give up nothing. That's the most ridiculous take I've seen online. Yes, it's annoying he went to LA. They're the evil empire of baseball. I hate that he is a Dodger. It brings me physical pain. It will be talked about a ton in the lockout and CBA negotiations. It's also not the Tigers' fault that was the best offer. You don't make deals because you don't want a team in another league, no less, to be too good when you're selling anyway. You take the deal that makes your team the best and is in your team's best interest. Also, the fact that the Dodgers are front runners to re-sign him literally could not matter less in negotiations. And I know that I brought that up earlier, but he is a rental. He will be valued as such in the trade market. If anything, it actually proves that he is purely valued as a rental because the Dodgers think, wow, we have more incentive to maybe pay more than everyone else because we are the ones with the resources that could re-sign him. So if anything, it's an indictment on the fact that they were confident his value was rental caliber because he is a rental. The other thing I've seen, and again, at this point, I'm just like spewing everything, all of my thoughts. So if it's bad for radio, I apologize. But I've seen a lot of like, well, I don't hate the return, but they should have waited because then someone would have upped their offer. Well, no. Like, you don't know that. There is no proof or evidence that is how this works every single time. What if the Dodgers called Scott Harris and said, hey, this is the best we can offer you, and if you don't take it today, then we're going to start making the offer worse as we get closer to the deadline. And then no one else's offer in that moment was close to the Dodgers. Remember the Erod deadline when Harris objectively fumbled beyond belief? What was the biggest criticism? It's that he waited until the last second to decide to trade Erod. They are not one-for-one situations, even remotely. But assuming that everyone would just get traded 2 seconds before the deadline ended if it was a guarantee that if you wait, the offer goes up. That's not like a one-for-one logical thing that happens in every single negotiation ever. It's a very presumptuous and a lot of assuming in that statement. John Heyman's really the only person that's been tweeting about like rival executives say that it's, what did he say, bupkis? Like, first off, what year are we in? These reports always make me laugh because if it was bupkis and you're a rival executive, then why didn't you pay more to get him? John Heyman is like very notoriously an agent mouthpiece. And I think that that's always going to be important to remember. So, all in all, best case scenario here, Tigers get a corner outfielder of the future. That is really good and affects the game in a lot of ways, is a 4+ win player. Their outfield going forward then becomes Clark, Hope, and Greene. That is something you can very easily get really excited about. They also get a top half of the rotation starting pitcher. I don't think River Ryan is going to be like an ace. I don't think he's the Skubal replacement in terms of like high-end ceiling. But if he's a solid number 2 or a 3 and you get him under team control for the next 4 or 5 years, then that is a massive win. And then obviously Smith, if he just ends up in an MLB rotation at some point in the next few years, then that's a win as well. Worst case scenario, Hope is a speed and power guy that just never makes enough contact. But honestly, the Tigers have had a few examples of that over the years, and he's more of like a gadget outfielder than anything else. River can't stay healthy. Obviously, that's the biggest concern with him. And then Smith, never has pinpoint command, is more of a reliever long term. That's worst case. So that's kind of your ceiling and floor as far as I see it. We'll see how it plays out ultimately, but for 2 months of Tarik Skubal, I think you got some young guys you can be excited about, and none of them should be too far away from contributing at the major league level. There's obviously a lot of nuance with that statement I just said, but I hope you bear with me. We'll end with this. I'm sad they traded Tarik Skubal. And for as much as some people who hate this return are going to listen to this episode and think that I'm like carrying water for the organization, I assure you I am not. I have zero ties to the organization. I'm not even sure they like me very much, okay? I promise you that I just come on here and say my own opinion. And if you disagree with that, that is the beautiful part of baseball, is that there's not one size fits all solution to sports questions. There's a million different ways to build a winner and a million different ways to build a loser. Time will tell the true value of this. People were excited about the Verlander return as well, myself included. That ended up being a complete and utter train wreck. There's also players on this team that are contributing right now for the Detroit Tigers that were part of trades for far less players than Tarik Skubal. And I do think that the front office completely mismanaged this entire situation, dating back 2 years ago. If it comes to light that Tarik Skubal just never wanted to extend here and never took that seriously, then it's not as much on the front office. But if there was no dialogue going from Scott Harrison Co. back to Skubal about trying to get an extension done, and there were no serious efforts to extend him long term, that's a complete joke. And that should be criticized as such. They were never going to trade him in the winter. They were never going to trade him with the expectations that this team had going into the year. But I think hindsight's 2020. And if being 3-ish games out of a playoff spot was all it took to trade him, then maybe you should have taken the possibility of trading him a little bit more seriously this past winter. I think between the arbitration situation, between his injury situation and who he told and who he didn't told, this has been a complete and utter saga and a borderline train wreck for the Detroit Tigers over the last calendar year. Probably closer to 2. I am sad they traded Tarik Skubal. I am also very glad that this saga is over. And if you want to hold out to hope, hold on to some hope, he's going to be a free agent. He's not going to extend with the Dodgers before game 162. So, if he really likes the Tigers that much, and you really think the Tigers actually are willing to spend money, then they'll just go do that in the winter and get him back. That's not going to happen. This is a sad day because Skubal is one of the most successful homegrown talents in the history of the Tigers organization, and now he is gone, likely for good. That breaks my heart. I have maintained, as I said at the top of the show, for years, literally years now, that just paying the man his money and keeping him long-term was always my number one choice. But thinking the Tigers got absolutely nothing for him, or that this is some like all-time historic fleece, is disingenuous, I'll say, in my opinion. And I don't even think they left value on the table. They got around-ish as much as they could for 2 months of a guy who's going to play once or twice a week and then be a free agent for a bleep ton of money. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. Be kind. Not like, I'm not saying to me, just to like to the fans. Okay, we're all in this together. We all want the same thing. Yeah, sad day. It's gonna sting, but I am moving forward with the excitement that these guys that they got could end up being pretty darn good. And I blame the front office for a lot of this. I blame ownership for all of Freudian. I blame the front office for a lot of this. I blame ownership for a lot of this. I think Tarik Skubal deserves part of the blame for this situation, but at the end of the day, it has been a heck of a ride. And I am so glad that Tarik Skubal was a Detroit Tiger and pitched his peak prime years wearing the Old English D as one of the best pitchers this franchise has ever seen. Hopefully, his last goodbye for the Detroit Tigers can be giving us some good pieces for the future. Hopefully. And if they suck, then you got to start talking about people losing their jobs. But if you were clamoring that you wanted Tarik Skubal traded, this is what that always was going to look like. Man, I hope these guys are good. Okay, I'm pretty much just like sitting here staring and rambling in deep thought, so we can end the show. But I appreciate you all greatly. We'll be back in a few hours. We'll be back at midnight on Monday talking about the weekend outside of the Tarik Skubal trade. I promise it is okay to not pick an extreme and not be, wow, this is the best trade ever, or this is the worst thing I've ever seen. This is neither of those things. And that's where I stand. I'm sitting right now. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all in a few hours. Go Tigers, baby.